economy is changing the way we work, the way we live, and the way we look at belongings. Why own something when you could share, borrow, or rent? Debbie Wosskow is CEO and founder of Love Home Swap. She will share her thoughts on the sharing economy and on scaling up a business. What marketing strategies have worked for her companies, for example. And she will also reveal some of her life hacks as a successful entrepreneur. Welcome, Debbie Wosskow.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me today. So, as teed up, I'm going to take you through about half an hour talking through the sharing economy, Love Home Swap, which is my current business and how it's grown, and then finish off with some of my top tips for life, which hopefully will be useful. So who am I and what do I do? Hopefully I'm about track record. Love Home Swap is my third business. I've grown and exited 2 businesses and set up my first when I was 25. Love Home Swap has grown over the last 5 years to become the world's largest home exchange company. I also had a bit of a dabble with politics in the UK, and I led the UK government review of the sharing economy about 2.5 years ago and authored a very long report for those of you who have the stamina to read 90,000 words in English. Because I like to be busy, I've recently set up 2 new businesses, the first of which is the world's first crowdfunding and funding platform to back female founders. It has launched in the UK. The global data on female entrepreneurship is pretty terrible, so only 10% of all capital raised globally goes to fund a female founder. Only 7% of investors globally are women. So we've set about trying to change that. And my new business, because I love marketplaces, is called ShareStyle, which you can check out if you have access to the UK App Store, and it's a marketplace for style services. So that's me. So what do we know about the unstoppable rise of the sharing economy? Well, I'm talking to a very educated audience here, so I don't have to spend a long time talking about what the sharing economy is. It's about people making money and saving money from the assets that they own and the skills that they have. And the sharing economy in Europe alone will grow to 570 billion by 2025, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, who have written the book on sizing the prize. Already, 36% of US travelers have used at least one peer-to-peer service since last year, and visits to peer-to-peer accommodation sites are absolutely growing. Home sharing space is also joining the mainstream. The example that I always give is that this summer, my mother stayed in an Airbnb, who in her 70s is not a natural early adopter of the sharing economy, which shows you how far it's come. Markets that I think are going to be super interesting are obviously China, where there have been cultural barriers to the growth of the sharing economy to date, and the market within Europe in and of itself is very exciting. What we're seeing, and I see this in my own business, is consolidation and M&A within the sharing economy sector. We're seeing new businesses joining forces with more established companies, and so Accor's acquisition of One Fine Stay, Airbnb's acquisition of luxury retreats, guest-to-guest acquiring home exchange. It's an interesting market to see how old-fashioned travel companies are dealing with a new and emerging space. And when we look at how big that market's going to become, the global peer-to-peer accommodation market, which is just one segment of the sharing economy, is estimated to be worth $34 billion in revenue by 2025. So it's against this backdrop that I'm going to tell you about my own company, which is called Love Home Swap, and you can check it out. It looks a little bit like this. The premise is pretty simple. Who in the audience has seen the movie The Holiday? So that is the inspiration, and it literally was the inspiration, and it shows you how, for aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience, inspiration can come at any time. So the story behind setting up Love Home Swap is that I was on a plane on the way home from a holiday with my 2 children when they were very tiny, and I had had that experience, for those of you who have been new parents, where I sat in a very small room in a very expensive hotel in the Caribbean, feeding one child with the sound off the television, not wanting to wake up the other child child eating room service. And on the flight on the way home, I watched the movie The Holiday and thought, does that even exist? Because actually, my home in London was empty whilst I was staying in a hotel. And at that time, and particularly at that time when my children were small, I wanted to stay in a home. I wanted to stay in a home as nice as my own. And so because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not very good at leaving things alone, within 3 months, we had a prototype for Love Home Swap. And over that time, the business has grown to the site that you see now. I felt that there was an opportunity to change the game. Home swapping is as old as the hills. It has its roots in a very pre-digital world with teachers swapping with other teachers for long holidays. But so far, nobody had really taken on a brand and thought about how it could appeal to someone like me. And when I talk you through the audience that we now have targeted and grown for Love Home Swap, you'll see what I mean. We raised our initial venture capital funding in 2012. In 2015, we sold a stake in the business to Wyndham Worldwide, which is one of the biggest travel companies in the world, owns the Wyndham brand, but also the timeshare brand RCI, which is particularly relevant for us because part of what we're looking at doing is recreating timeshare. You don't have to buy a new asset in order to share it. You can share the one that you already own. One of the things that we did that really changed the game for Love Home Swap was that the initial idea was about a simultaneous exchange. I'm London, you're Stockholm. In order for us to swap, you need to want to come to London and I need to want to go to Stockholm. The innovation that has really helped to scale the business in the last 3 years has been the introduction of swap points. What that enables you to do is to bank time in your home, earn points through that time, effectively a currency, and spend that in order to travel anywhere in the world. And what we've learned a lot is that loyalty is everything. Successful swappers have a much higher lifetime value. If you are a home swapper in year 1, then there's a 65% chance that you will renew to year 2's worth of membership. By the time you hit year 4 as a Love Home Swap member, you renew 94%. So who is our audience? Well, over half of them are families. They're me back in the day with these 2 tiny children. And it obviously works very well as a concept for families versus hotels because of the space, but also because of the cost saving. When you look at and try and boil down why it is that people are participating in the sharing economy, whether it's Love Home Swap, Airbnb, Uber, whether they're sharing boats or pets or renting out their box room in their home, it's generally for 2 key reasons. The first is cost saving, but the second is about having money can't buy experience. And experiences are the currency of the sharing economy. If you look at Airbnb now and how it's positioning, it's all about Airbnb experiences. We also appeal to the empty nester cohort. So 25% of the properties in our home on our site are owned by retirees. They're perfect for home swapping. They're generally cash rich, time rich, and asset rich, and they like to travel the world. Second home ownership market, again, is important. Almost 60% of our members own at least 2 homes, and they're swapping their vacation home. And we have some incredible stories, and I'll talk about storytelling in a minute, of people who have gone completely nuts for home swapping. And the one that I always tell is a family who have 4 children under the age of 8. They're called the Princes. They live in the UK, but they own a second home in Thailand because the wife in the family is Australian. And they read an article about Love Home Swap. They put the house in Koh Samui on the site. And they worked out, and this sometimes happens, that they could absolutely use this to change their lives. And they're now at the beginning of year 3 of a world tour. They're homeschooling their children, which is very admirable. I could not do that with my own. And they're traveling the world through the power of home swapping and staying in a load of different fantastic homes around the world without paying accommodation costs. So what's the mindset? Because when we think about our audience, it's about who are they, but it's also what are they like. One of the ways of describing Love Home Swap is that it's an Airbnb for grown-ups. That's because we appeal to a slightly older audience who are not staying on blow-up beds. We're mid to high-end. We're travel pluralists. That's important. So the message is not never stay in a hotel again, but it is we're increasingly finding that people have a mix of different ways that they like to travel. For second homeowners, it's very appealing from a tax efficiency basis. So even if you might be Airbnb-ing out your second home or indeed your primary home, you're still having to pay tax on the profits. You don't have to do that with a traditional exchange. People who are interested in new places, we say that they have a bit of a twinkle in their eye in terms of being open to new experiences and financially savvy. And the geography, when I talk about the homes that we have, which is now in the hundreds of thousands, having launched with just 250, is broadly a third, UK, US, and rest of the world. But we do have a focus on bigger cities and also vacation destinations. So our mission, and we're an incredibly mission-driven business, and I think that's how you build something from being just an idea to being something that scales globally and has offices around the world, is to help people travel the world through the power of sharing. And that's written all over our office worlds and on the mugs that we drink our coffee from. And this is the very long version of how we describe what we do. And when we've done above-the-line advertising or video on the site, which is a big part of the way that we've driven uptake, this is what I talk. I make sure that I describe it as being super simple, that people have choice, that we have thousands of quality properties around the world, that it's exciting, that you get to travel more and you get to go on holiday for longer. And that sharing stuff isn't new. It's as old as the hills to want to share, but you can now do it at scale. You get a one-off holiday, you save a lot of money, you've done a smart thing. And again, our key message, we believe the more you share, the richer your life becomes, because it's not just about the money, it's about enriching your life. And pooling resources, sharing what we have, cutting out the man, not only feels good, it also adds up. And so this bleeds into our marketing strategy and the way that we think about our audience in terms of existing audience and potential. We always segment it into these three categories: in the know, in the category, and in the market. So who are the in the knows? They're the existing fans of Love Home Swap, the people who already know what we do. And what are we trying to do with them? We're trying to convert them, but we're also trying to turn them into our advocates. Our 1,000 super swappers, in other words, the 1,000 members who have done the most swaps and are the most vocal, have absolutely driven the growth of the business. So finding a way to target and incentivize and identify them has been critical. Middle tier in the category, who are they? They're people who might have home swapped before. They might not have used a website to do it. They might have done it through friends or family. Or they're people who are interested in the concept, either because they're comfortable with the notion of staying in someone else's home, they're comfortable with the sharing economy, or frankly, they've got a lot of children and the thought of staying in a hotel is just too expensive. So they're at the consideration stage. And when we look at the funnel in more detail, it's about how do we convince them, how do we get them over the line? And then who are the people in the market? Who are the lookalikes of home swappers? How do we find them? How do we build our brand awareness at this stage? So that links to the channels and our messaging hierarchy in terms of how we bring those three in. So the in the know, it's about a call to action. It's about creating a sense of urgency. Our business is highly seasonal, and it doesn't map onto the traditional travel industry because we're a membership business. So our very busy months are the first half of the year. So for people who are in the know, we've got to create a reason for them to sign up now, because there are these fantastic properties, because the seasonality, because it's school holidays, because it's about booking their summer vacation now. And member get member has probably driven around 50% of the growth of the business over the last 5 years. So how do we incentivize people? And for our cohort of members, it's not about the money. It's not about saying, here's £50 worth of Amazon vouchers. It's about status. And it took us a while to work that out. So this concept of super swappers and giving people primacy on the site, featuring them in CRM, boosting them to the top of search has been a big part of how we've driven member uptake. For the people in the category, the channels there, PPC, SEO, CRM, retargeting, also our sales team. When I set up the business, I think I was unclear that essentially part of what I was building was a call center. It's a high-end call center, but nonetheless it is a call center. Because when you're dealing with real-life experiences, you can have all of the performance marketing channels in the world, but people still want to talk to a person on the end of the phone. So when I look at the Love Home Swap team, team around the world, about 60% of those employees are people who are on the phone. So to me, that was unexpected. And we need to sell the dream. We talk a lot in the office about property porn. If you look at the site, you'll see it. It helps. It's a big part of the marketing tools that we use. And it's also why we have such a massive dwell time on the site, because people like looking at the pictures. And so for people who are in the market, the channels there are paid social, content marketing, and affiliates. Affiliates is something we've really struggled with over the years because we just couldn't get the right kind of fit for us. But I think as affiliates have moved upstream, we've managed to get that really working as a channel. So what are we talking to them about? What's the story? It's about why home swap? Why do it at all? What is it? Because we're teaching them. It's about learning how. The most important channel for us for that in the market category has been real life stories. And storytelling is at the heart of what we do as a business, and we do it a lot through video content that helps to inspire people. When we look at specifics about how we've done that, we are modeling lookalikes directly off LHS purchaser data, which has been our most important channel in the last year as the business has really scaled. So I like things in 5, and I'm going to end with 2 lots of 5. The first is, what are the 5 key lessons that we've learned along the way as a business? It's this point on storytelling again, creating a buzz, especially when you're starting up. For the aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience, it has been all about my story. I must have told that story about the holiday about 7,000 times. But nonetheless, it is a really important lever. And so when you're starting out, be prepared to tell your story to anyone who will listen. And get on a plane and do it, and get on breakfast TV sofas, and be the best advocate for your business that you can be. Second thing, which is absolutely part of the DNA of Love Home Swap, is talking to your customers. Everything we do is led by customer insight, by the customer insight team, which even as a young business is one of the first teams that we built out. Everything from brand development to product development. Challenge your team to do it week in and week out and make it an important part of the DNA of the business. So we have a weekly stand-up at the beginning of each week where the customer insight team is front and center, and they're talking to the entire company, people in the office and globally, about what our customers think. And I think that makes a big difference. The business model is absolutely key. We A/B test everything all the time, from the membership tiers to how we present prices. I can't emphasize enough how, in the end, it is all about the numbers. And again, be prepared to innovate and grow your business model, change it over time. So again, back to the initial Love Home Swap model, where it was London, Stockholm, Stockholm, London. You had one way of being charged money, and it was a subscription. If you fast forward to where we are now, there's still the subscription, but we also have an insurance product. You can also buy more swap points. You can put in place a swap points overdraft, for your buying points in advance of banking points. And so there are lots of different ways for us to monetize the customer as the customer has grown. And that has been developed through research and through talking to them about what they want. Constant ROI focus. I'm from a very entrepreneurial family, and I grew up around people talking about business around the breakfast table. And I suppose that has ultimately made me quite grubby in terms of the way that I think about business. I still ensure that I check the company bank balance every day. That's kind of in the DNA. But make sure that you are reviewing cash flow, and that the marketing team is driven to ensure that every penny counts. And if you look at the brand that we've grown around Love Home Swap, that has been through very little investment in brand and no real investment in above the line. It has been through being very performance marketing driven. And the final point is around new channels. I made the point already about our offline team being as important as our digital marketing team. For newer concepts, particularly for homes, and if you think about what is at the essence of Love Home Swap, it is someone, a stranger, coming to stay in your home and you staying in a stranger's home. People want to talk to people. And so to wrap up, I normally share this with entrepreneurs, but hopefully this is relevant for life. And this is my 5 top tips for how I do it when people ask, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? Well, the first and the bad news, I'm afraid, is that I get up really early. And if I didn't get up early, there's no way I'd be able to fit everything in. So my alarm does go off at something with a 5 in it. And I would recommend, if you're not an early riser, then train yourself to be one. Sweat every day. If you talk to and try to distill habits of successful people, they are motivated people. They are often very engaged in fitness. For me, it's the 1 hour of my day that I actually have time to myself, which I love. And also, it's the 1 hour of the day when I don't want to have to think. So I box. I'm not a yoga person. I like to hit things. Read into that what you will. But I build that into the routine. The third thing, and this is my grandmother, who I was very close to, died last year, aged 97, and was a very successful female entrepreneur. And her point to us as kids was always about being the best you can be, and that's my real mantra. We'll have days when things are rubbish and we don't feel happy with ourselves or the people around us, but I really try to focus on that. And I always say that to my children, who at 6 and 8 roll their eyes at me when they have to hear that, but nonetheless. This is, I think, an important life lesson. We are all very, very time poor, busy. Tempers can get a bit frayed, particularly in the startup world where everything needs to be done now and it's very high octane. I really focus on never burning a bridge, which is an expression that means it's about keeping good relations with everybody. That doesn't mean that you are always perfect, but I think that if you really try to display goodwill towards people, then it helps when you are trying to build something from scratch and you tend to ask for a lot of favors. And number 5, I did a talk on this last night to a very esteemed group of people from Harvard Business School who I suspect were expecting something a bit more academic about the secrets to my success. But I always talk about the 3 Gs, and I'm also a very busy angel investor. I back 4 or 5 different startups a year. And these are the 3 things that I look for in the businesses in which I invest, but also in people, I think. They're called grit, grace, and graft. And I'll take them in reverse order. So graft is just about hard work. And none of this stuff happens overnight. I know it all looks and sounds glossy, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making anything a success. And so really, you're looking for people who are going to work hard. You're also looking for people who are gracious, and this is back to this theme about not burning bridges and being the best you can be. For people who can smile even when things aren't going well and be gracious to people around them, because I think that's the only way that you can build and motivate a team. And number 3, and the most important G for me, is about grit. The idea that you start with, the team that you start working in, the business that you work for will change. It's all about whether you can change with it and whether you have the staying power. So grit is my number 1 thing. It's not always pretty. It's sometimes the grit that's behind the fist that's punching the bag at 5 o'clock in the morning. But nonetheless, it's the ability to just dig deep and get results. And if I could leave you with anything today, it's about thinking about the importance of grit in your life and digging deep when things aren't great in order to get results. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
My pleasure.
I was thinking, the sharing economy is really, really cool. What else do you think we could start sharing? We share our homes, we swap homes, there are other things. What you know, just...
Yes. So in the UK, I'm the chair of something called Sharing Economy UK, which is the industry association that's been tasked with self-regulating the sharing economy that has 80 members. So I can list what some of those other businesses do. There's a business which is actually started by a Scandinavian entrepreneur called Borrow My Doggy. Which is about sharing your pet.
Sharing a dog.
But think about it, because there are plenty of pets who need walking. And there are plenty of people like myself who will not have a dog in my house. It's just too much of a responsibility. So myself and the children very often borrow someone else's doggy on a Saturday. It means that the dog gets walked. Yeah. It also might mean that the dog doesn't have to go into kennels when people are away. So the extension of something that sounds kind of silly is working. There's a big trend now towards looking at food waste, who you cook for and how you cook. And I think there is a really interesting social extension of that to elderly people and to people who need to eat and might not be able to have the time, energy, or inclination to do it. And it's almost a next take on some of the food delivery businesses that are now massive, like Deliveroo and Just Eat, which are huge businesses in the UK and beyond. And I think that the kind of final lens on it is around what other possessions can be shared. So we have seen some really interesting traction on our site around boats and things that tend to be underutilized but are expensive to buy. So those would be the next
I've
things up for
seen
me.
ideas with tools for the garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
You seldom use them.
Yeah.
At least I do. But sometimes
I think that the
you need them.
statistic, the killer stat is meant to be that the average power drill gets used for 12 minutes in its lifetime.
Yeah. You have started a lot of companies. You're a successful entrepreneur, but what mistakes have you made?
Oh, I mean, horrible numbers of mistakes. I think the mistake that you keep on making, and I keep on making this, and it's the killer mistake, is around people. I think it's the absolute hardest thing to get right. Around hiring and talent and who you're going to work with within your organization. The thing that I consistently do wrong, and I've done it wrong in the last few months, and I would caution anyone against this, but it's human, I'm not sure how you avoid it, is when you're really up against it, or when you're starting something new, and you're in that frame of mind where you just need someone, a body, then that's when you always make bad decisions. And I think realizing that you can, even if it is painful, take more time to really judge whether people are right in an organization. And I speak as someone who's always started startups that have then scaled. And it takes a particular type of person to like that environment. It's a bit crazy. It's all hands to the pump. There isn't often very much structure. And I think the mistake for me is always seeing this amazing, shiny person with this fantastic CV because they've come from Google or Facebook or Amazon. And I want them within my tiny little 10-person company because they're going to change the world. And then when they get there, there's often a massive cultural mismatch. And I think I keep doing that one, and I need to stop it.
Let's see if the editorial department, are there any questions from the audience or from you, perhaps?
Yes, you mentioned that storytelling is a major part of your marketing work. Can you give us a few examples of successful strategies in that area?
I think never be afraid of PR. It's something that we've used a lot for Love Home Swap, and I use a lot in all of my different businesses. So for the recent launch of Albright, which is the fund for female founders, we have told that story time and time again. And the story that we tell is the story that I told to you at the beginning, which is pick your data points and never have more than 3 because people stop listening. So, the data point for Albright is only 10% of global capital, 7% of investors are female. But the killer stat is that women, sorry, gentlemen, get better returns than men. In fact, they get 35% better returns than men. And so you've got to get into your groove in terms of the data and then just get out there and tell it and realize that you need 3 key messages and that people won't listen for more than a minute. Something I've learned a little bit about politics and the work that I've done in politics in the UK is that people will only listen to you saying one thing. And so it's overcoming your inner boredom with kind of recreating the story over and over again and realizing that you're telling it in an effective way to different audiences. So put yourself front and center. I suppose the final thing in all of my businesses, and I know that this isn't the case for all digital businesses or businesses at all, but this is the kind of entrepreneur I am, it really helps if you're the customer. I am the customer of Love Home Swap. I am the customer of Albright, so I'm a female founder. ShareStyle, which is our new marketplace for style services, again came about because I wanted to refurnish a room in my home and I was pinning stuff on Pinterest and I just couldn't ever get to do anything with it. I think if you are the customer, then it really helps to tell the story, but you've got to create your legend, whatever that is, whether it's the data, whether it's being on the plane on the way back from the holiday with the movie The Holiday. So work out what your legend is and tell the story.
But can we get too much storytelling? Because there are a lot of storytelling at the moment.
Do you know what I would observe on this is it's got to be backed up by fact. And I don't just mean data, I mean by the performance of the business. And ultimately, this is all great, but unless I'd built a business that was big, that scaled, that returned capital to its investor base, that did a good job for consumers, nobody cares. So you've got to have storytelling, but with substance.
Okay. Another question from the audience?
Yeah, I'm sure that when you talk about your company with different people, sometimes you encounter people that just don't want to share anything.
Yes.
What do you say to them?
Well,
What do you do?
I think part of it is realizing that there are certain people that you're never going to convert, and you would save a lot of time and energy if you just gave up on that. You know, the questions that you always get asked about the sharing economy or Love Home Swap are primarily around trust. Can I trust a stranger in my home? How can I get into a stranger's car? But I love my home, and what if something happens? And I think there, again, it's back to data and proof points. One of the things that we've really built up on Love Home Swap is peer reviews, which is the absolute trust language of the sharing economy, which is, these 10 other people have stayed in this home, they've given it 5 stars, and you can see them and they're real. And this is particularly the case for Love Home Swap because we're dealing with other people's houses. So in that sense, we're in rather a privileged position versus the rest of the sharing economy because everyone's got some skin in the game, right? You literally know where the person lives because you can see. So if they're going to come and have an all-night party or set up a brothel in your home, it's unlikely to happen on Love Home Swap because everybody on it is a real person. So I think it's about meeting those questions and points, again, back to data. The final thing I would say on that about the sharing economy, and again, being the sort of spokesperson for it in the UK and having to do a lot of political arguing the case for the sharing economy, there are problems, right? We can't pretend that there aren't. Airbnb creates challenges in cities for space, for planning, for communities. There are certain parts of London where there are Airbnbs absolutely everywhere, and that affects the way that people live. The challenges for Uber, do we even need to go into that? But they're very, very well documented, whether that's to do with the company itself, but also to do with the impact that that has upon cities, upon traffic. I would say the biggest live topic now for the sharing economy is around the gig economy and how people get paid. And I think that what we're seeing, and we shouldn't shy away from, is a massive change in the global economics of how people work. Right? Because you can now work in a way that you could never work before. You can work completely independently. So there's almost a big ethical question about what is incumbent upon the platform to provide. And I'm in Scandinavia now, so you guys are already ahead of the curve on this, but in the UK, we're reasonably far behind. If you're working as an Uber driver on any of these platforms, you're not really accessing the welfare state in the way that you would if you're employed. So I think that was a long-winded answer to the question. It feels like it's around rebutting some of those with data, but also accepting that it isn't perfect and owning up to some of the challenges that disruption, which I know was your earlier topic, can cause.
Okay. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.